right, so we're going to start. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a nice time with your tea and snacks, and I hope more people join us quickly. So, my name is Sonia George. I'm the Executive Director of the Global Digital Inclusion Partnership, and I'm very, very happy today to be able to moderate a panel with five incredible speakers that you're going to meet. To discuss a theme that we already been discussing in the last 2 days, but for the next 40 minutes or so, very much focus around what we call connected resilience. Basically, how women and girls, especially, are incredibly resilient when faced with challenges in a digital world. And so, let me move to this mic. Can I please invite all of the speakers on stage? Please come. Jenny, where are you? Okay, Jenny. We'll introduce everyone properly. Sorry. Um, so Jenny Sulfat is a researcher at the Digital Empowerment Foundation. Nitesh Bharadwaj is leading a very interesting community organization as well. Salima Razvi is an economist, a senior economist and researcher at the Copenhagen Consensus. Pasana Imram, I'm sorry, is with the ISOC Foundation. Lauren Grubbs with USAID. And again, I'm really, really pleased that you are all here to discuss these topics. So we're going to be really good. There's going to be a lot of questions that are going to feel like we're having a dating game or something like that, one of those really speed dating type of things, because I'm told we have to rush and keep up with time. So, what inspired our conversation for today and this session is this report that I hope you all have a copy. And if you don't, please pick up one outside on our booth, Connected Resilience, okay? And in this report, which was supported, our research actually by the ISOC Foundation, represented by our colleague here, we looked at specifically the gendered experiences of meaningful connectivity in the post-pandemic world to try to understand. Here we are in a situation in the world where the gender-digital divide continues to remain stubbornly wide everywhere. Post-pandemic, it had increased, but also specifically, women and girls really fared the burden of this divide in a way that was disproportionate compared to their peers. And so inspired by this research and by the results of the research that show that not just women and girls are missing on the opportunity, but in fact, all of you and the world, all of us, are missing a lot because we do not have all of women and girls included in our digital world. The world is missing more than $1 trillion a decade because of this divide. We are about to lose another $500 billion in the next 5 years just in low and middle income countries if we don't do anything about it. But we do know what we can do. In fact, we've known for a while the kinds of things that we should be doing, but somehow we're not. And when I say we, I'm talking about policymakers, ourselves as civil society, private sector, research institutions. What is it that we need to do? How do we act? How do we behave to change the trajectory of the gender digital divide? So, in doing this research, my team was very fortunate to be able to work with the Digital Empowerment Foundation here in India, and Jenny led the qualitative and ethnographic research that we did here in India. So she's going to tell you a little bit about the importance of this research, but Jenny, I especially want you to also think about, in a very quickly answering these questions, the importance of doing research from a qualitative perspective when we're thinking about gender and women specifically. So on to you. Everyone has a mic in these tables. Please.
Hello? Yeah. I'll start with that, the importance of actually doing qualitative research. You know, there's this thing, India being a colonial country, post-colonial country. And actually, this enumeration started at the time of when the Britishers actually started coming here, and they could not actually make sense of, us as a society, right? We are so diverse, so many languages, so many castes. So this categorization and classification actually started at that point of time, that, putting people as backward classes, or, putting together people as scheduled tribes over different self-identification which they had as Adivasis, or like the names of the communities which they identified with. So in a way, looking at people as data, numbers which can be strictly categorized as, a particular category has emerged from there, and still remain a practice in a country like India, where you cannot really understand people as numbers or categories. And that is where, the importance of qualitative research come, even when we are looking at digital as a space, or connectivity as a space, and especially when you're looking at gender, where gender, we always try to reduce it as a singular category, but also has, a spectrum of differences within ourselves. So that is the starting point. I could also speak a bit about the research, the qualitative part of the research, which was done both in India and Philippines. And both the researchers, Lisa from Philippines and us from India, we actually interviewed the indigenous communities and, people there. And one thing which that, I can see that common emerged from both the countries is that the experience of indigenous women in both countries when it comes to connectivity is similar. So while there are differences, there are also similarities in these, global experiences of being connected. I could get to the details of the study later. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. That's really good to hear. Nitesh, we have you here on the panel for a couple of reasons, but the most important one is that you work directly with rural communities, marginalized communities, and you understand their realities, their lived realities, and how, first of all, is technology important for them? That's the first question. And when it's important, how do we make it possible? How, to what extent, not just you as a community worker, a community mobilizer, how do you make technology relevant for people's lives? But to what extent are people responding to those efforts from your organization? So share a little bit about that reality from the community, and then we'll go to another one, please. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. So I'm Nitesh and I work in Nandurbar district of Maharashtra, which is considered as one of the most underdeveloped districts in India. Uh, so just to give you some facts, that we run a YouTube channel, uh, and we have a subscribers of around 25,000. We are working in a population of around 1.9 lakhs, and all our subscribers are from the same community, because we are making content in a hyper local way. Now, around 70% of the issues which we cover or which we highlights are the issues which are directly related to women. Uh, Around 80% of our beneficiaries are women. But when it comes to YouTube data, 90% of our viewers are male, only 10% are female. Uh, we have an average viewership of around zero point 0.6 million, out of which we have 0.54 male and just a female. On an average, we receive around 4,000 comments and no comments from a female. Uh, Now, what it shows is that, so there are only two things. A, either we are not making good content for the females, or B, they are watching it, but they are not watching it through the devices which are logged in their name. It's either logged in the name of the husband, or father, or any other person. Uh, but when we go on ground, we also screen all these films and all these videos in an offline mode. And whenever we go there, we realize that women have seen all of our videos. And they are the one who comes to us every time and say कि okay, आप इस चीज़ पे फिल्म बना सकते हैं क्या? Can you make films on this issue? Can you talk about this issue? So, and see, we are working in an area, in a community which is fighting for the basic things like water. Women have to go, there are many villages, around 20, 25 villages are like that, where women have to go around 10 to 12 kilometers every day just to get water. Maybe we'll show a picture where women, we have, in last 2 months, we have covered around 25 cases. Okay, yeah, second. Yeah, so this was a new thing for me, which is called bamboo ambulance. So you can see that in these two photos, they are pregnant ladies. We have received around 25 such cases in last 2-3 months, where a pregnant lady has to have carried in a bed sheet, and they were taken by the male members through a river because there is no any road connectivity. So this is the reality. And we have received only 25, but there are other cases also which has not been reported to us. Then you can easily see these two villages where women have to get down around 200 meters just to get water. So these are the basic things. And every year, 2 to 3 accidents happens where they lose some of their bones just to get some water. So this is the place where we are working. And these are the basic things. Water, having water, basic necessities like health, education. We are not even going to the education. We are still fighting for the water, still fighting to live. So I think this is the reality where we are working.
Thank you. So this really tells you that here we are talking about technology and technology solutions, but these are the realities, right? And you know very well, many communities here in your country, those are some of the realities that we have to tackle. If technology is going to be at all useful in people's livelihoods, it needs to somehow make sense, right, in this context. And I'm sure you have many ideas, so keep them, because we'll ask you a couple, on what does it mean? You know, how can technology facilitate or not people's livelihoods? So, Lauren, you are with USAID, and you see the research that we do. You know the research that many of your partners do. And I think part of the challenge is that we continue to have this problem of one, lack of data. People keep talking about lack of evidence, lack of data. I don't necessarily agree with that always. Let me say that, because I think we do. We just don't want to see it the way it's being presented often. And I think not just we have lack of data, but so what do we do? What is our responsibility in explaining what it means to fill these data gaps? Especially when data cannot just be quantitative data that doesn't in any way describe these realities, right? What the research that Jenny and Nitesh do show that it's a different kind of context. So tell us a bit about how do you see that problem? How do you see ways of addressing that as USAID?
Yeah, absolutely. So I sit with the digital inclusion team at USAID, and I cover the gender dual divide portfolio. So this is absolutely such an important part of what we're trying to do in terms of YDEF, in terms of the research solutions that we're trying to invest in. So you're right, there is a lot of data out there, but oftentimes it's not intersectional. It's not describing the true experiences of women, especially not when you're looking at these overlapping identity components. There is not a lot of data, first of all, sometimes even gender disaggregated data, but then looking at the other components in terms of disability disaggregation, in terms of indigeneity and disaggregation, there are so many different facets of a woman's life that needs to be taken into account.
both quantitatively but also qualitatively, to really make sure we have a nuanced view of what are these socioeconomic factors, what are these cultural factors that are really the barriers to full digital inclusion. And so I think what we've seen, unfortunately, is with this underrepresentation, we're not getting the full picture. And when we do have, there are sometimes components of we are actually to see what this overlapping digital divide is. So I just want to pull out a few stats from one of my favorite reports by GSMA, which looks at the disability and gender gap, which came out in 2020. So it's a little dated, but they're planning to put out some new research on this disability and gender gap very soon. But of course, funding is always a component there. But what they put out in 2020 is that the gender gap in mobile ownership in India was 20% when looking just at gender. When looking just at disability, that gap is 23%. But then when you look at the overlapping gap there, it becomes 37%. That is almost double either one of these gaps looked individually. Similarly, when you look at mobile internet use, because we know it's not just access, but it's also are people able to meaningfully use these digital technologies in ways that make sense for their entire lives. You see in India, unfortunately, the gap for gender is 50%. So that's huge. When you look at disability, it's 17%. And then, of course, when you look at that intersection of gender and disability, it goes up to 55%. And that's huge data, right? But then how is that being translated into real policy solutions, into real projects on the ground is certainly still a challenge. And I think one of the things that we are trying to support and trying to have effective strategies around it's really threefold. So first is to partner with local institutions, local organizations who have been doing this work on the ground for so long. They know the context, they have the partnerships that are so necessary, but then bringing that to a new stage, bringing that to the global forum so that it can really be taken up and really be able to frame the way that these issues are being talked about. Another thing is these community-based surveys, participatory survey methods to make sure that we are not just having outside institutions come into communities and not having them involved in what is being collected, and then also playing a part in the dissemination of that, not just having an extracting process, but really making sure that that community that participated in those surveys, participated in any kind of this research, is also able to get the back end of that so that they can kind of inform what they're trying to do on the ground as well. And then, of course, real-time data gathering. We don't want to, even working for the US government, I'm sure anyone who works for the government knows we can be very slow. And so we really want to make sure that we are getting this kind of data quickly, using mobile technologies and using these new technologies in a way that we can really inform policy and inform these solutions as quickly as possible.
Thank you. That's great. And again, as I said, we have been very fortunate to be able to do some of that kind of research in limited number of countries, because funding research from through the ISOC Foundation, including ours, that allows for these. So tell us a little bit of how do you see this kind of research, but most importantly, do you see your peers following this path? Do you see your peers investing more in the kind of research that not only fills the gap, but in general on gender, but especially these gaps that are much more about the real livelihoods, right? The information about people's livelihoods.
It's working, yeah. So at the Internet Society Foundation, I think a lot of the projects that we support are very early stage initiatives. They're not, we mostly support organizations or individuals that have an idea or they've tried out an idea and they want to scale. So the fundamental thinking is always to address an existing gap. And I think with your project, that's exactly what we identified, is that there are all these numbers, but to make sense of these numbers, why exactly is it happening? And the first phase of your project, which was the cost of exclusion report, was so timely and so important because it came out at a time when our lives were very digital. Social, professional, everything was very digital and was so intertwined with our personal lives. So I think building off of that, it became even more important to keep supporting this work, because that transition into a very digital forward life was not going away anytime soon. So it was important to recognize and understand this problem even better. and really dig deep into the factors that are contributing to this. Your report speaks about a lot of stories around why women don't even have access to some of these devices. And if you think about it, it's basically oppression in a form, right? It's oppression of agency, oppression of freedom, where women are told that if you get online, then you can do XYZ things, which will give you more freedom, which will allow you to learn things that we don't want you to learn. So in a way, the lack of access to these technologies is kind of being weaponized against women to be able to be more empowered. So when you think about the consequences that come out of having lack of access and being able to present these stories through qualitative research, I think one, it really hits a nerve when you know that this is happening to people. This is somebody's life and this is their story. And it can be very moving, not just at the level of policymakers, but also for other communities to really look inwards and like, oh, maybe this is something that's happening within our community. Maybe we need to understand this problem within our community better. So yeah, I do think that research like this can be very empowering from a self-advocacy perspective as well.
Great, thank you. Salima, you know that when we do research, we don't do it just in a vacuum. In fact, one of the key elements of the work that we do is that we do research specifically to inform policy decisions. Okay, we want policymakers, any decision, regulators, private sector, civil society, all the stakeholders in our ecosystem to learn from the research, especially policymakers, and make decisions. So we make very clear recommendations on how to go from the research, the findings, to act, to really act, to do things differently, to do things in a new way. You've read the report, you've seen the recommendations. I would like to ask you two things. One, did we do enough? Are our recommendations in line with what you would expect? You are a policy analyst, a policy evaluator, you work with governments. Are we on the right track? Are we doing sufficiently to get especially policymakers to pay attention? And if not, what do you think we could do differently, especially to be able to communicate better to policymakers? Because I think certainly we do our best, but we're not there yet. And we have 5 more years to get to the Sustainable Development Goals, and we're so behind. So give us your wisdom, please.
Thanks, Sonia. Yeah, so my work basically entails looking at public policies across different geographies, analyzing them through a cost-benefit analysis lens. And simply put, we look at the benefits and costs of different interventions and policies and derive a metric called the BCR, which is the benefit cost ratio. Across all the work that we've done in Africa, Central Asia, East Asia, the Pacific Islands, what comes out very strongly that investing in women's issues is great value for money investment, right? And the diversity of programming within the gender paradigm is also very impactful because it just doesn't empower the woman, it also empowers communities through her. So we're not just building resilient women, we're also building resilient communities, which is fabulous. In terms of the kind of investments that we make for building this gender resilience, I think digital inclusion is a fabulous pathway to achieving that. It's a very critical, cost-effective and cost-efficient tool because when we look at the drivers of inequality that women face, I mean, there are systemic drivers, there are, so many structural agents of inequality which are there present in almost every sphere of a woman's life, and which she faces on a daily basis. So I think it's when we put women as the central stakeholders in any kind of analysis, what we're doing is bringing about a significant change, a significant empowering change to the women, and there is a strong economic argument behind that. Why, when we do that, when we put women at the center, what we're doing is opening up pathways of economic and social activities, and that improves her economic outcome, it improves her health or physical outcome, and that has an immediate effect not just on her, but also on her household. For example, research shows that children of women-headed households, of mothers who work, spend far more time in school. The dropout rates are significantly lower. And that's important because, again, research shows that for every additional year spent in school, the child's future wage earnings get a boost of by at least 10%, which is a significant economic boost. Also, when women participate in economic activity, there is, of course, an economic boost to the country's economy, right? And we've spoken of the gender gap. We know that India has just closed about 64% of its gender gap, which is sad. We're ranked about 129th out of 146 nations, which is right at the bottom 20. Women constitute almost 50% of the population, and there is a significant, force that they can bring. But we don't really see to that. And the research again shows that just by reducing the gender gap globally, of which I think India constitutes more than 50%, there could be a $28 trillion boost to the global GDP. For India itself, we're looking at a $770 billion boost to our economy. So that's really significant. And the reason for investing in women, in gender issues, in actually building gender mainstreaming into policy making across all levels is very, very critical and crucial. Whether we're talking about digital infrastructure, whether we're talking about building digital interventions, whether we're talking about creating digital literacy programs, I think it's crucial that we gender mainstream all of these policies.
Great, thank you. So I know that I'm being told by the organizers that I need to speed up. I'm looking at the WhatsApp messages as they come. So one more topic that I want to go through with the speakers before I ask some of you in the audience, what does connected resilience mean to you? When you think about resilience in a digital world, what does that mean to you? And I'm asking this especially to the women in the room. Not that I don't want to hear from men normally, but I don't today, I'm sorry. I really want to hear from the women in the room for you to tell me, what does that mean to you? In your lives, what do you have to confront, to face with these challenges in inclusion in the digital space, okay? But what I want to ask the panelists is about coalition building. One of the things that we've learned is that working in partnership, working in collaboration is critical. Governments with private sector, with civil society, all together in subgroups, what have you. I wanna ask you, not just what do they mean for you in your own environment? What are you doing about it? But if you can share one specific example in which a partnership, a collaboration in coalition really resulted in really serious, not just impact, but something unique, different, that really surprised you. Let's start with you, Lauren, and we'll go through everyone.
Absolutely. Stronger coalition building is so necessary. I think what we have found is that really aligning interests and leaning into the competitive advantage of each stakeholder and what they are doing, it makes for the best coalitions, really aligning behind that common goal. And so I think governments, with private sector, with academia, with civil society, because everybody's bringing such an important perspective. And so one example I'd like to bring up is the coalition that was formed out of the G20 statement last year that declared we are all together going to try to halve the gender digital divide by 2030. It's a huge goal. No one actor can do this on their own. And we're really trying to support the efforts of YDEF. I'm sure you've heard about YDEF, which is, of course, the fund that is directly implementing these projects. But the initiative is a sister initiative that is working to bring together these governments to make aligned commitments. Aligned commitments so far, over $1 billion. So it's been really exciting to see all of these organizations come together to not only share these commitments and to, in some cases, direct funding, but to also share their learnings, because unfortunately, there are so many organizations working on this in silos, and they're not speaking to each other on what is effective, on what can really be done. And so we're established a kind of knowledge sharing community of practice. And so also a plug, if anybody is interested, it is open to anyone who has worked on the gender digital divide that would like to share some of their, either their stories or their effective, or even their challenges in addressing this issue.
Great, thank you. You have heard about the YDEF, and we'll talk a little bit more about it if we have some time. Jenny and Nitesh, both of you, what does coalition mean for a community organization, for civil society? What is their relevance? Jenny, okay, go ahead. Either of you, please.
I mean, since Nitesh is also sitting here, and then you're here, and then how, we actually did this research was quite collaborative, right? Like, I mean, we worked together, then we worked together, we went there, we met people, but we also carried, a TV that day when we went to like do the FGD. So that, and then Commons Collective, I don't know whether they're here. So yeah, they're there. So the engineers from the Commons Collective actually volunteered, and they also traveled with us. So like we all went there together, and then we like set up their, they have, uh, some content which would work without internet. So we set it up there, that at the school, and all the children came, and then we had like a small celebration there. And after that, we also started interviewing people. I think, like, collaboration means that, right? Not even when you're doing research, or we're speaking to communities, you're building up systems which is not very extractive, more participatory, more action oriented, uh, giving due credit to people for where it's needed, and not taking over the research, like the way, the freedom that GDIP has given in doing the research. So I mean, I think that's a very good example.
Great. Nitesh?
Yeah, so I just want to give you one live example. So this has happened with us 15 days back. So we push Gram Panchayats to conduct Mahila Sabha, which is a very essential thing. So we ask all our Panchayats to conduct Mahila Sabha, and when we started it 2 months back, we realized that women were just coming together and just sitting, and they were not talking at all for initial few meetings. But something happened 15, 20 days back, that when they united, they talked about something, which is, they said that there is an illegal liquor shop going around in our village. So they highlighted that issue. And then we wrote a letter to district collector to stop that shop. Now, this is something, and hopefully by the once the election will over, it will get stopped. So I think this is also kind of collaboration among the people, among the women, which is very important and which will bring out change. So yeah.
Great, great. Apasan, do you feel that as a funder and working with the communities of researchers that you work with, do you feel that coalition building is percolating through that community and it's becoming more effective?
Yeah, 100%. At least that's what we strive for. That's what we're aiming for. Not just within the research grantees that we have, we try to encourage a lot of community building within the region. We try to have in-person gatherings where people can connect. And even though the projects that we support seem like they have nothing to do with each other, grantees are able to identify because they know the field really well. They understand the problem a lot better than we do as funders. So they are able to make these connections. And we've seen some fruitful collaborations come out of these gatherings. Even across programs, we try to facilitate this. Internet Society has chapters across the world, so we also try to make those connections if people want to work in specific areas. So yeah, we are trying to make these small efforts in having a community of people that can feel like they're not working in silos. And lastly, I think for research especially, we actually encourage them to have some element of collaboration in their project right from the get-go. It could be just in terms of collaborations in research or with different stakeholders.
Great. Salima.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about our experience in Malawi. So we did this entire assessment of Malawi's public investment policies over a period of almost 2 years. And one of our top recommendations, we were working with the Ministry of Economy and the Ministry of Finance. And one of our top recommendations was in education. Teaching at the right level, where the teacher gets a tablet and spends an hour once or twice a week with the child who is lagging slightly behind in class. And that comes out, that intervention has been implemented in quite a few countries and has significantly high BCRs. So the government actually took it up. The Ministry of Education implemented it. They got people to sponsor those tablets, and that program is running. It's been evaluated, and we're actually seeing improvement in learning scores. This is over a period of 4 years now, and we're seeing a significant improvement in learning scores. So I think it was a wonderful, achievement for us that our research showed a particular pathway to achieving a certain indicator, and the government actually worked with us, collaborated, took that up, and implemented it, and it was a win-win situation for both of us.
Thank you. So we have very little time and just about 5 minutes before we close. So without putting anyone on the spot in an uncomfortable position, may I ask the ladies in the room to stand up, please? The ladies, the women and girls, please stand up. Okay. And the men, please make sure you acknowledge the women in the room. So here's the thing. There are less women in this room, but we are in a conference that brings many communities together, right? Most of the women in the room, regardless of where they are coming from, are definitely more challenged and confront more difficulties than the men in the room, without a doubt, no matter what. Now, if there are any volunteers in the room with women, let me give you one of the mics. Can one or two of you share with us some of the challenges that you face in being what we call meaningfully connected? Not just having internet connection, but reliable, quality, with a good smartphone that you can use to get whatever information you want, that you don't feel violated or spied on what you're going to look, because someone's going to see I'm looking for something that is actually important either for your health or what have you. Do you feel that you are completely free and able to have the kind of connectivity that we are talking about in your livelihoods? And you don't have to disclose anything personal, but tell us yes or no, and if you can share one way that you feel that you confronted with a challenge on an ongoing basis. Our friend will help with the mic. Anyone can volunteer, only the women in the room, please. Yeah?
So my name is Anisha. I'm one of the fellows from the Digital Swaraj Fellowship Cohort 2.
Wonderful.
So yeah, I do feel that there is a sense of surveillance when I'm looking up important information, whether it be about my health, if I'm dealing with situations outside of even just like a very private thing such as health, if it has something to do with the existing systems, patriarchal systems specifically, I believe that I have that fear of, okay, if somebody were to go through or were to use my device and to come across my search results, I feel that I would be subject to a lot more scrutiny, isolation, alienation moving forward without really understanding the context. And hence, I feel the need to either delete all of my history or not speak to another human being, rather speak to chatbots that might have information. So I'm free of prejudice there as well. So yeah, these are my ongoing struggles with connectivity.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That is a very common reality. I hope everyone is hearing this, especially the men, because I'm going to ask you to make a commitment today. Any other women who can volunteer their experience? Anyone would like to volunteer something? Thank you.
Hello, I'm Pranali Parate. I'm SBI Youth for India Fellow. So I was working with Barefoot, one of the marginalized community in Rajasthan. So in Rajasthan, most of the village there is ghungat, parda system is there, and I had never been in village. So basically, I was working there. I'm just telling you the two sides of women. One of the community, they made me realize that you are a girl, you should take ghungat. So I was thinking, yes, they are just since childhood they have seen everyone is in ghungat parda system, so they try to make me like that I should be in parda system and make everyone explain in ghungat. whatever I'm trying to do there. And it takes time. Then I realized that I can't be like that, but it takes time to change their thinking because they had been living in like that. Then I was working there in education, so I just engage with them, with their children in educational thing because their kids are not going to school. So first of thing, I have made the friendship with their kids. One of the communities, Kalberia, Banjara and Bagrial communities are there. So I made friends with them. I sent them all in school, and the first initiative took, there is one woman that no, my child will go to school, because I made her realize that you are nomadic, you are just you don't have home, why you are making your kids like that. So that one lady who took initiative to send her kid, the girl kid, to the school, and the another 25 kids were there, and maximum were girls. So by seeing her, though every woman took initiative to send their girl or boy child in the school. So this is really very like, sustainable thing takes time, and the changing thing type, the development, if we want. So just first explain, just be empathy, just be in their condition, and slowly we can explain them. So few of them, like, they don't do gungat nowadays, but yes, so this is the thing that I just face, and I'm
Thank
really
you.
grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. And all of you who stood up, I want everyone in the room to applaud to them, because these women and girls every day are resilient women and girls, because they are coming up with ways of staying safe while being active human beings in their society with tremendous challenge. Remember that. Okay? So the ladies, please sit down, and all the men stand up, including Nitesh. I'm not going to put you too much on the spot, but all of you, please stand up. And I want to ask you to please acknowledge what you just heard. And in your own mind, you don't have to say anything, but commit to do something to the women in your community, to the women in your family, to the girls in your families, in your communities. Do something to make life better and easier for them. These two stories are not unusual. They just are everyday lives. So commit to do something every day. Think about what the women and girls in your family and communities are going through, and do something for them so that they can continue to be resilient, but they will have an ally in that journey of being resilient in our society. Okay? So thank you, and I hope you can remember that message. And to close, thank you. Please sit down. One second, I just need to finish here. Sorry. May I ask my panelists as we close, because we have just 1 minute, I think, maybe 1 minute, less 1 minute in the negative, just one line. What does it mean to you to come out of this 2-day event and bring that resilience in your own life as women and men who are working in the digital space? What does it mean? What are you doing to bring that about? So think about it and share with us. Whoever can start. Lauren, are you ready?
Sure.
Go for it.
First. I think coming out of these 2 days, I'm really excited and motivated, especially to learn from so many young people who are involved in this space, so many great students that I've been able to meet, just to make sure that women and girls are able to not only access, but meaningfully use in a way that is really safe and enables them to have all the opportunities that we all want them to have online.
Thank you. Others? Please speak up the mics.
Yeah, I think, I'm seeing the change. It's a slow, gradual change, but it's happening. And it's wonderful that the focus is now shifting to women, to mainstreaming them, mainstreaming policies around them, and building resilient, not just women, but communities and therefore countries.
Yeah, I'm so inspired by all the sessions that I've attended in these 2 days. I think working for the Internet Society Foundation, would love to be able to support more of such work going forward. We are going to be focusing more on women as a group, as a community. So yeah, very excited for the future.
So for me, I attended a session. I attended a session. You and Jenny were there in that session. So I think I learned a lot from them. The most important thing is that there are few things which we are doing, but there are many things which we are not doing right now, and we need to do a lot. And especially after seeing all the people, all the organizations, and every individual who are working, I think I'm really inspired, and I think I'll take this inspiration and I'll go back to to my community and I'll share the same with them.
Jenny?
I think we just like encountered a spectrum of issues, and then we had one session on environment and the burden of data centers on environment. Something that's a seemingly simple question of being connected to a more nuanced, complex questions, emerging from the conference, leaving more confused and conflicted. That's.
Thank you. And I commit to continue working with our team to do the best research that we can do to uncover these stories, to bring the voices of all of you to the world of us, and to make sure that with projects like the one that Lauren mentioned, that we also launched here in India, the first round of grants, the Women in the Digital Economy Fund, that is supported by USAID, Gates Foundation, and here in India also the Reliance Foundation. I hope it will be one opportunity that we can do a good job of supporting really new and incredible initiatives to highlight the importance of your participation in the digital economy. So I hope you are excited about that too. If you haven't learned about it, go outside in our booth and find out. We have lots of information, and just a lot of commitment to not just bring more women to the digital economy, but do it in a safe way, and really closing these stubborn digital, divide that I certainly don't want to see as I'm getting older. So hopefully we'll close it in my lifetime. If not by 2030, hopefully by 2035, who knows? But thank you. Thank you to the panelists for your patience with our rush. Really appreciate it. A huge round of applause to them. And to all of you for being here. Thank you.